fund deficit budget that was augmented with some revenues from water and sewer and refuge. It's $500,000 to a $6 million budget. That's significant. Can you tell me today what the projections are for the general fund at the end of the year, based on current experience?
Of course not. And that's something that the controller has to handle. And you know, you're aware of that, council member. One of the issues that we do have, and we have to, that we've stated it over and over again, when they say the city is insolvent, that's a general fund. There's water and sewer fund, which has money. There's debt service fund, which has money. There's all these restricted accounts, whether it be seizure money from the city or core technology, there's monies in all those accounts. So, once we.
And I understand the cash basis of this. The point I'm getting at, those of us that have worked with budgets, okay, on the military side and the civilian side, can say, after 3 months through the year, if a department is on track with that budget. Are they spending, are their expenses what they projected to be at this point through the year? Are their revenues what they expected to be at this point through the year? And you can make some projections.
Sure.
Okay? And to simply say, we won't know till the end of the year, in my mind, is absolutely unacceptable. Granted, there are things that are unexpected. There are things that change. Okay? And hence my recommendation of a committee, okay, not to make life more difficult for city staff, not to bombard with questions, but the financial experts that can look at things and say, you know, based on current revenue and expenses, the event center, based on its current budget, is going to end the year at 183% of what was budgeted. Well, we need to make some changes now in the first quarter, either in how we operate that facility or how we do that, or in what we budget for that facility. Those are the types of things that need to be coming forward to council, okay? Instead of limited to just city staff or just once a quarter. It is those types of things that I believe are the responsibility of council. To have, with all of the things that a city council does, okay, hours upon hours could be spent on just financials. Whereas a committee that understands numbers, that's not part of city staff or not part of council, could review, take the recommendations of city staff and say, yes, we believe those to be appropriate, and make them to city council. Or if they disagree with city staff, they can come to council and say, city staff has recommended this and we think this. Council, you decide. Ultimately, it's got to be council. Okay? It is clear to me that the processes are not defined for how we make these adjustments. The processes are not defined when we have unbudgeted amounts being spent. And as a result of that, that's why I'm talking, I contend that the committee is there. Councilwoman Castillo contends that we should allow the processes to go. Ms. Deborah Conley agrees with the committee. Are there any other recommendations from this committee that we can take to the council as it relates to monitoring?
I'm sorry, Ms. Conley agreed with which committee?
to allow the processes to go.
With the committee?
No, you just allow, he stated that you allowed this. I agree that we need to allow Laura Fabian to do her job. We need to allow her to bring the monthly reports to city council. We gotta allow her, the time to give the council a quarterly, budget adjustment recommendation for your approval. And I believe that that's the one way that we need to give her time to do her job. More committees are gonna bring more work for her to do, that's gonna take away from what she was hired to do. So I, as city staff, and that's one thing that we have to understand, the city staff is charged with a portion of this governance, and the city council is charged with another portion of this governance in regards to financial. Now, that's something that was lacking prior, that needs to move forward, but we have to allow each council member the ability to know what's going on, and each council member the ability to vote on what they see fit. And it needs to come from that controller whose position was created for this specifically.
I would like to see, to outline the process of this committee or of the procedures of this committee that is being considered, as to see what exactly, what is the process gonna be for this committee? What is their chore, what is their, you know, what is their job description? You know, to say, you know, because, I mean, like Andy said, you know, if the comptroller's position is being, you know, used elsewhere, you know, obviously she probably needs a little bit of help from a committee of some sort. But I'd also want to see what the description would be to the committee, or of this committee that's being brought up, if it's gonna take away more time from her position, you know, rather than alleviating some of that. You know, that's just my, you know, we can talk about a committee all day long, but, you know, if we don't know what the heck this committee's gonna do, if it's just gonna require Laura to be sitting there and just be answering questions all the time, you know, that's just my take on that, is I wanna know what the description is for this committee.
May I respond to that according to the charter on page 27? The council shall designate no fewer than 3 of its members to serve as an audit committee. This committee shall lead the process of selecting an independent auditor, direct the work of the independent auditors to the scope of the annual audit and any matters of concern with respect to internal controls, and receive the report of the internal auditor and present that report to the city council with any recommendations from the committee. That's the scope of our authority. The other thing.
Now, is that the audit committee, or is that the committee for
The
the
audit committee.
comptroller for this?
The audit committee, those are our responsibilities. The other thing that I wanted to point out regarding committees is that council members are prohibited from appointing themselves to any committee or board, even if permitted under state law. Specifically, no council member, mayor, or city employee may serve on any 4A or 4B corporation of the city.
That's a contradiction from the other.
These corporations shall follow state law, including the requirements specified in your city charter. Yeah, it's a contradiction because we didn't follow this for this audit committee. We did not follow that.
Well, to answer you, I would think that if a recommendation is presented from this committee to the council to establish a committee, then the next CNA out of the council would have to be to define the guidelines, because I can see already that I don't care how many people you get that haven't been conversed to this in-camp or whatever the name of that program is, to sit down with Laura, is gonna know anything about what they're seeing except numbers.
Yeah, because that's the committee that's never been established before, like the audit committee. I mean, I don't know if we've ever had it before.
I brought that up at city council last year.
Oh, did you?
Laura's last
I
report
came
that came
forward.
out, one of the things with her reporting, that it was asked, you know, where are we, what are the projections, how much have we spent? And if you look at the page, it actually gives you your budget, your year-to-date and the, percent collected or percent spent. I think that's very different. I think it's a great way to keep an eye on these specific things as to, where you are in your budget, how much has been collected, so that you can do a projection. I think that, these are reports that she's just started giving to the council. I think they're answering a lot of the questions that you're asking, in my opinion, and if they're not, then let's get with Laura and get her to start getting us that information.
Well,
And I think, isn't that, it's, you look at it and it gives you, it's broken down, your general fund municipal court, the budgeted amount, the year-to-date expense, and then the percentage of the expenditure for that year. If you're over here at 70% and we're 3 months in, obviously, we need to stop and take a look at that.
Okay?
Yeah, well, that was one of my
That's
things.
my point.
is
Yeah,
that
and that's in the
committee-
report that she's giving to you on a monthly basis.
Part of it is, okay? And part of it is the process that I'm talking about, okay? And you can go to page 15 of this report entitled 301 General Fund, Department Civic Events. This is the report she gave to the council. Under legal fees, budgeted, 0. Spent year-to-date, $6,000. Under professional fees, entertainers, budgeted, 0. Spent year-to-date, $34,763. Office supplies, budgeted for 12 months, $1,500. Spent in the first 2 months of the fiscal year, $1,360.83. 90% of their budget. Percentage of total operating budget spent, 30.57% in 2 months.
One of the issues,
Okay.
I'm sorry,
Currently, the city charter says the council approves the budget and that the city manager has the ability to move money from one fund to another fund to ensure that at the end of the year, that we end up with a balanced budget. It was identified in last year's audit that process was inappropriate, that we needed to do budget amendments. That was presented to the council in May of last year. How many budget amendments have been made? None. Okay? We ended the fiscal year with a deficit that's put us, with this approved budget, into a $500,000 hole for the general fund. I'm not going to argue what is the appropriate response, okay? It's not my role at this point, but rather the two things that have been put on the table as it applies to monitoring. We'll get to the cash basis piece in a minute, okay? But as it applies to monitoring, was the recommendation of a finance/budget committee? Or do we recommend that we let the current processes be and see where they are at the end of the year?
I believe that we need to let them be, because this comptroller position, like she stated, has only been on board for the 4 months. And you state that the findings last time said that we needed to do budget amendments, that prior to that, it was the city manager's ability to move money where he saw fit, and we're getting away from that. You know, from meeting with Laura yourself, that she is creating new line items in specific departments to be able to say, this is what needs to be in that place. When I do my budget amendment, I'm gonna recommend that we move monies to cover those. Because before, the legal fees for the 4A were paid out of the general fund, which is one of the overages. And she continues to work on it, but if we don't not allow her the time to do that before we make a decision, to say, yes, we need a committee. If we do not allow the 4A board to do their job before we say we need another committee, then we're not getting anywhere, is what I'm trying, is my take on it. And I understand.
What would you think is reasonable?
I would like for her to make this first budget amendment at the end of February, and then allow her another 3 months to see where she's at for the city and what changes she's made, because she's made some positive changes. I believe you've been able to visit with her also. But those things we need to allow time. I understand the sense of urgency because it is urgent, but I also tell you that I've seen the steps that you as council have taken, but we need to allow those processes to take place. One of the on the recommendations of city staff, we sat and we looked at everything that we needed to do, and we made our recommendations. And once we get to the cash portion of it, was freezing salaries, talking to the association about their collective bargaining and what we can do on that, even though it was voted by the citizens of Flores, was what we can do to possibly stretch their contract further, to say, you know, can we not take pay increases until we address these issues? We've looked at every aspect of doing our part also, to say we need to focus on this. But
So
we need
city
to,
staff is basically recommending no changes to monitoring process.
Until
Well-
May.
Pardon me?
May.
Until May. So in our response, or in the city's response to the auditor regarding monitoring, we're gonna say that changes have been made since the last audit, and we haven't been able to experience the results, and be patient with us, and we'll see them this fiscal year.
that's not a correct statement.
That's
That's
not correct.
inappropriate for you to
Well,
word
no,
it that way. That's very
Be careful.
sarcastic.
It's
No.
negative.
No.
It accomplishes nothing.
I wouldn't wanna wait through the whole year to see any type of,
No, we're saying 6 months.
no, I understand, but, you know, I think
Once
it's,
we're at the end of the
Until May.
fiscal, we're almost at the end of the fiscal year.
we're looking 6 months and we're already going up for budget when in October again. So, for a new budget, so, I mean, what was really accomplished?
Well, what we're saying, allow Laura to do the first phase, and then we'll look at it. Is that right, Andy?
That's correct.
Can I make a comment?
Yes, ma'am.
You know, we're talking about catching up and they were behind. This is the precise reason they were behind, because we kept hitting her with more and more things to do, and she can't get what needs to be done on task. You know, the more you bring in a committee, set up a committee, where are they gonna get all their information if they're not gonna be going into her office and stopping her from what she's supposed to be doing, because we're already behind, and take up more of her time, therefore putting us more behind. I too feel that we should give them a chance. We've given Andy directives, we need to give that a chance before we try to proceed with anything else. I'm not against the committee, I just think that we need to give it a chance.
Well, I'm not against the committee either, but I wanted to hear what Laura's take was on that, you know, that way, you know, I definitely don't want to hear somebody else, you know, answering her questions, you know, answering the questions for her. You know, I understand that you know, you're overseeing her position, but, you know, I still want to hear it from her.
Well,
And
don't
the next
forget,
thing- the next
don't
thing
forget the
is-
city council involvement is gonna take place, what, next city council meeting, in 3 days, you're gonna be halfway through the second quarter of this FY. I would think it's incumbent upon all of you sitting council members and the mayor to do their responsibility to oversee what the city staff presents to you. And just as a question of personal knowledge, if Laura's position on the Manning document came in 4 months ago, what position was Mr. Smith in? Because it was my understanding that she took his job.
Yes, it was a contractual position. He was under
But it
contract.
wasn't.
Now she's full.
Okay,
Yeah, he was temporary.
thank you.
So if she's doing so much work, what did he do?
He cleaned up the books for the auditor, he worked very closely with the auditor, and he started putting some of these funds in place. Some of the suggestions that the auditors made, or some of the issues that they pointed out, he started making those changes. Laura has come in since then, finished, and is continuing on that path.
Well, she still has a lot of work ahead of her if that guy didn't finish what he was supposed to
He was contractual, I mean, he was here on contract basis, and he started a lot of the process. Laura's here finishing up those changes that were put in place and that Tom started.
Waste of money, yeah.
Actually, he got a job, that's
He
why he
did a
left,
lot,
right?
yeah, he did.
Meanwhile, consideration could be taken on the individuals that you as a committee would want to be on this other committee, and perhaps have them come in here and give you all the spill on what they would be looking for, so that way Laura could have an update on what she needs to prepare for, if you all decide that's the route that you want to go.
The point is, Councilman Guerrero, that we need documents, and they would have to come from Laura.
Right.
Because without that information, how can, for the council, how can this committee make decisions?
Would she really need to go, would they really need to go through Laura, or would it be something that's on hand, you know, say, Andy or Sherry could provide?
Yeah, I don't know, but I still think it's too premature to form another committee.
Or even upon the, you know, if on the part of the.
Absolutely, and maybe we need to look at some of the things that Laura has started doing, like these reports. If additional information is needed, if we need more things added, if we give her those directions and tell her what we need on them, possibly that could answer some of the questions that maybe the committee would be asking themselves. You know, if these reports are not as complete as the council wishes them to be, then let's start there and start working on the reporting that she's currently doing or has done. She's only done 2, so we definitely, this is the time to change it and make it more involved if that's the case.
But she's only done November of last year and December, or.
October,
October,
November.
November.
And because of reporting and because of monies coming in and bank accounts closing and like the outstanding debts that are there, in the way she explained it to me, and this is her explaining it to me, by the time the books are completely closed, you're 60 days out from the end of that month. And so she's always gonna be a little bit behind on her reporting. One of the other things, we need to be very cognizant as a council and the decisions that are made as council, as far as the funds and the monies and where the things come from. You know, the entertainers, the information that was there could have possibly been covered by hotel motel tax, which is another line item in the budget that was appropriated for that, and the previous council had decided to use those monies. Unfortunately, because of actions that happened, or just because of actions that have happened, we now have that negative in the budget, and we've got to figure out where that's coming from, because it no longer can come from the hotel motel line item to pay for those entertainers. And that was the cancellation of the holiday extravaganza. We just have to be very cognizant about the decisions that we made that affect our budget in council, and I think more information being given, or more information being understood, more positive questions being asked, I think will get us where we need to be as far as things like that happening from this point forward.
Are there any other suggestions besides a committee and besides what's in place for monitoring, besides, you know, comptroller? Is there anything else that could, that's a suggestion for monitoring?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I mean, as far as looking at the reports, a monthly, especially a monthly report, and if something jumps out as being in the red, I mean, wouldn't you immediately ask the question, why is it in the red? You know,
Evidently not. We haven't for the last 4 years.
But the
I'm starting
finances were-
today going forward. I
I
don't wanna
know
go
you are, but
backwards.
a lot of us just don't think that
Because the
way.
reports need to
Because
show.
we got here, there's a reason why we got here, and that's why it has some citizens on the board that are questioning. How did we get here? What were you guys doing? What were you thinking?
I thought we
How
were
why were
here
you
to
making
solve
these
a problem.
decisions?
We know what the
I'm
problem.
telling you why
We
we're
know what the,
questioning you.
we know what the problems are. We know what they were. We know what they are. We need to solve it, find a solution. And if we can't find a solution, then why are we here? What are we doing here?
No, we need to all be part of the solution.
That's
what
right.
we need to be. We already know everything that happened. We know that it was wrong. Half of that council's no longer there. You know, we've got a great council right now. We have people that are in place and committees that are willing to work to bring this city forward. Let's concentrate on that. Look at your budgets. Study them. Look and see where you think maybe there shouldn't be that much money budgeted there, maybe it should be more over here.
But Mary, you can't
Be
ever see,
prepared.
how can you know when you can't see anything?
Yeah, you're basically in the same,
The councilmen have their budgets.
but you're,
And it's online, right?
You
It's
can't
about-
see
budget
what
is
money's
on.
bought with.
maybe one of the things we can do, instead of creating an additional budget audit committee at this point, we've got these reports, the council gets them, we can start looking at possibly things you'd like Laura to add. Maybe this committee should meet, and come up with some of those recommendations before creating an additional committee.
That's what the charter said was our
Well,
job.
once a month,
Adopt those
well,
recommendations.
right, I mean, but it's me, instead of just, okay, the audit is done, here's our recommendations and walk away, maybe we should continue a once a month meeting or twice a month meeting and go over the reports that Laura does,
And then we'd be getting outside of the scope of what this committee and the charter has said that it
Okay,
was tasked with doing.
that's,
And-
that was just a suggestion.
I'm gonna go ahead and drop monitoring. Obviously, there's opinions that vary from one to the other extreme, and simply say that this committee could not come up with any recommendations based on monitoring, and refer to what staff recommended and leave it at that.
Well, I do have a recommendation there. If this group feels that what the city has put in place, or the city staff has put in place, then I think we ought to have a recommendation to the city council giving them a vote of confidence. If we don't have a vote of confidence for what's in place, then we need to come up with a recommendation as to why we don't have a vote of confidence for the city manager, the city staff, to include the comptroller. Because then, I would have to say that the 5 sitting council members need to take a mirror. And when they look at the mirror, that's their responsibility to make sure that what they're seeing in the budget. Now, I've not seen the documents that she has, it's going back through there. If that was presented, as your agenda, when you first walk into the city council meeting, and we, the civilians, when we walk in, if we could get a copy of what the city council has, unless it's Privacy Act or something else that would prevent it. I've asked many a time, why is it I can't see what the 5 sitting members and the mayor sees? And then I wouldn't be a dummy when I walk in front of the podium and say, hey, is this city charter that's on the current website current? And Mr. Jocelyn said, yes, it is. And then I pointed out the 9.2.7 that Lou was supposed to fix, and he hasn't done anything as far as I know to fix 9.2.7, which drives us to this committee meeting right now.
Can I just say something? We just need to hurry up and do something, because we're just, to me, we're like a dog wagging its tail, just going round and round and round and round. Let's just hurry up and do something. And you know what? If you don't do it right, you're the one that's gonna have to answer, right? Right. The people are already mad, you know that, right?
And there's 4 people here that have an election in the future if they want to
That's right.
continue where they're
That's
sitting
right.
and represent their
You know
place.
what? They know what they're supposed to do. Do it. And if you don't do it right this time, you know what's gonna happen. Because the people are already mad, are still mad, and are gonna continue to be mad until all of this is fixed. Right?
Then I would,
Then just do it.
based on that, make the recommendation of this committee that monthly financial reporting and quarterly budget amendments continue per the contract with the city manager and include, okay, and ensure a balanced budget. Okay? And what that would say, which is not in the city manager's job description, is that through monthly reporting and quarterly budget amendments, that we end the year in the general fund even. If that is the goal, if that is the measurement, or that is the mark on the wall, then these monthly reports and these quarterly adjustments would allow for that.
And is that unlike current process? Oh, Mr. Miller mentioned.
It's revenues and expenditures for 2012, 2013.
Okay.
They include the carryover from,
They can, and you know that. That you can't, that's why it was stated in the reports that it was a 24 to 36 month window to be able to correct. all of that.
$355,000. We cut $200,000 out of this year's budget with these employees. That's $155,000 that we've already frozen. We're talking about freezing pay. We're talking about freezing everything but non-essential services. We're talking a very, very small piece of this budget, particularly when we're able to transfer into the general fund from refuse and from the others. I'm not saying create a 3 months reserve. I'm saying finish the year with that $355,000 deficit.
That's not possible, you know that, sir. What our goal is to spend less on this budget cycle than we bring in revenue to address and attack the deficit that we have. And that's why it's stated that it'll take 24 to 36 months to correct entirely, and also start addressing the 3-month reserve that the city has never had. So is it something that I can tell you that 2012, 2013, we're gonna spend less money than we have budgeted for this year? Yes, that's our goal. And our goal to do that is to attack the deficit that's already in existence.
Before we close this meeting, I wanna bring some that the auditor said. And she said that there was a check found in a folder. There was another check, there was 2 checks found that were out of, not where they were supposed to be, and they were found, I'm afraid that's a symptom of what's going on. Why are these checks sitting in folders? What's up with that? My mind is where are you spending the money? You know, in each department? Are you spending the money on, a whole bunch of things you don't need and giving them out to family and friends? I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Excuse me,
I am so
I don't
sorry,
need
but
your-
you are out of place here.
no, I'm not.
He's saying
I'm
that.
telling
It's
you.
actually, you're out of order for doing that. Unless she's off topic or breaking a rule of procedure, that tone is inappropriate. She's allowed to speak. You will be allowed to speak when she's done.
Okay, I apologize for that. Go ahead, please.
I was not pointing the finger, I wasn't saying that's what happens, I'm saying that is that is not good to have those checks out of order and in folders, signed with no amounts on them. And it makes you wonder, when we're in the deficit and everything's been so, the bookkeeping has been so, out of whack, it makes you wonder. It makes me wonder, and then it makes me wonder even more when you don't want to be transparent with me at all. You just keep on locking it down. I don't want anybody new in here, I don't want anybody new in here. I'm just telling you, from a citizen's point of view, that that's what we're thinking. I'm not asking you to agree with it, I'm just telling you, that's what we're thinking. We're going, why aren't you letting me in? What don't you want me to see?
What do you want to see?
I
Is
want you to- I
there
want your-
public records you can see them? Is that
No, you
right?
can't.
Andy?
Yes, sir.
I'll try again.
With no recommendations, pro or for, as it relates to monitoring, I'm going to move on to the recommendations made by city staff regarding general fund cash deficit. The 5 vacant positions from the general fund would certainly be a savings. Question: would the savings in the water and sewer fund be transferred to the general fund? Would that increase the water, sewer fund, interfund transfers that are projected for this year?
That would be something that, yes, it would address that, or it would be the council's prerogative to say we will not do any more transfers, and those monies are gonna be staying in the appropriate fund for future use on capital improvements.
Thank you. do we have a dollar amount associated with salary freezes for 24 or 36 months as it relates to employees as well as employees under the collective bargaining?
No, we do not at this point in time. What we would do is during the budget preparation for this following year, we would see what, it's always a city council's prerogative to cap salary increases at cost of living or additional merit, so that would be something that would not be known.
Okay, so we would not see any benefit from that until the next fiscal year.
That's correct.
So there are no raises projected for the current fiscal year. Discontinuing the retiree insurance coverage for any and all future retirees by amending the employee handbook and eliminate the health reimbursement arrangements. Couple of questions about this. Based on the presentation that Ms. Laura Fagan gave to this committee, it is my understanding that we could not do either of these until the next fiscal year. Is that correct?
The retiree, the cancellation of any retiree, future retiree can be done at any time. The elimination of the health reimbursement arrangement also could be done immediately. The issues that we've talked to Mr. Talley about have addressed those questions on that. What we could not do was the new enrollment, to say the new enrollment, we're gonna do a 80-20 split between the.
If-
I'm sorry.
Okay, well, I'm just going on this thing. Do we have any estimates on what that savings would be for this fiscal year on the medical reimbursement?
No, we do not.
What would it take to get those estimates?
He's looking at that. He's looking at those issues, and the issue that we would know right off is that we would not incur any more liabilities by having to pay out any more of that money in the future, because it varies from year to year
Right.
depending on
But I
what kind of claims.
How many retirees are we looking at this year?
That are still on our plan, we've got 3.
Well, we can't kick them off, it's
No,
just future
correct.
retirees. And what I'm getting
Yeah,
at
that's
is,
what I'm asking about future retirees, how many would, are planning to retire this year?
We've just got one that we know of. But I'm sorry, what happens, Councilman, is when we go out for bids on our insurance, we don't get
The
takers.
discounted price?
Yeah, we don't get takers because we offer that, so it hurts us in the long run.
we budgeted X number of dollars for, health reimbursement this year. If we stopped it tomorrow, what would be the savings based upon the budget?
Do you have it on there?
And I don't necessarily need that number today, Andy, but what I'm getting at is if we're going to make a recommendation to council
Sure.
to say, hey, we want to change how employee benefits are received, what is the potential savings versus what is it gonna do to the employee?
Sure.
And be able to weigh that difference is all I'm asking.
Okay.
If we as a committee are gonna make that recommendation, we need to be able to back that up with some numbers. Limit spending on essential city services, that's a current council directive. The permit fee, yes, you've talked about that presentation. Do we have any guesstimates as to what the potential revenue is going to be? Or are we gonna have to wait until the 28th presentation?
We'll have to wait till the end of the presentation.
We know about the affluent water, there is a process in place. The disposal fee for water treatment plant sludge, I think that's something that I'm vaguely familiar with it, but none of this has been presented, to council yet. But that is certainly something that is gonna help revenue. 2013 budget workshops enact a multi-year zero-based budgeting practices and consider a property tax increase if warranted. Here I'm gonna suggest that the budgeting process begin in March. that the budgeting process be zero-based, and that the budgeting process be a continual 3-year budget. Meaning, after we finish one quarter, we've added another quarter on the end of this thing. And as we have talked about with monthly reporting and quarterly budget adjustments, we would be budgeting out 3 years. It would be very beneficial to the council to be actively involved in that process. However, I am concerned on the number of meetings that it would take of the city council to effectively do this budget process. And ask the question of this group, if a committee was created to assist in the budgeting process, be it for the entire process where one day could be focused on the police department, another meeting could be focused on the others, to really get the process. Now understand the zero-based budget. Here's the police chief, you have no money. Now you have to tell me why you need 24 police cars. Justify it. Why do you need $150 for toilet paper? And justify it. And to put together a real budget and based upon where we're going to be next year and the year out and 3 years out. Is that something that the council as a whole needs to be involved in by the number police officers, police cars, how much toilet paper, how much do we spend on utilities for the police department? Or do they need to be looking at this from maybe a little bit bigger picture? Would a committee be more effective in that process? In that, by keeping the council out of it, and this essentially being a working committee, council could attend, they could listen, they could participate in that, but we make it smoother process for meetings. And it might make the job of city staff in developing a budget and working with departments to develop a budget easier. I don't know the answer to that, but I would throw that out for discussion.
As part of city staff, we're gonna be involved in it regardless, the committee portion or the council's delegation of that authority would be up to the council to say, I'd rather have somebody else sit in my spot and get all the work and then present it to us at one bid. It's always been council participation in whatever portion of the budget. That would be something that you as council members need to think about, or as a committee. Does it make a difference to me? No, it doesn't.
Well, and let me just add to that, we're not giving this committee any authority. We are asking this committee to help validate the budget so that when it comes to council, if questions exist, if changes need to be made, we've had a group of people that are working on the budget that can say, if Councilman Guerrero says, well, what if we increased this line item to this amount? These are the group of people that could say, this is what the impact is going to be. And because they worked on the whole process to do that. But are we giving them any authority? Absolutely not.
Something similar to this committee to where they'd be offering suggestions.
And in accordance with the city charter, as it's a committee appointed by the city council, no council members could be on the committee. And I would suggest that the committee stand alone from city staff, that we don't have the conflict of city staff being on this committee. And the committee would take the information from city staff, work with city staff to put together the budget to go forward. But not, we don't want city staff voting in that process is what I'm getting at. Not independent of city staff.
And how would that be different from the budget committee we were proposing earlier?
And we were talking about a finance committee that was reviewing current spending. This would be a committee that is preparing a 3-year budget.
The first would be more like an oversight committee.
Just a thought.
Well, since it was one of your bullets, just out of curiosity, the bullet that talked about eliminate the health reimbursement arrangements on your positions that you're not gonna fill, you have a cost of $2,000 for both wage and hour and salary for the reimbursement. So you're talking about completely getting rid of all of that? And if so, how many city employees do you have? That's an easy math. 2,000 times the number of employees is what you'd actually benefit
Sure.
if you were to eliminate. And you're gonna probably get a lot of kickback, because as when it was briefed, when we listened to that document, everybody was saying, I wish I had that job, because the benefits. So you're gonna get a lot of kickback from however many employees that you really have.
But I don't think that the total amount is in the budget. I mean, if we had 52 employees and the medical health reimbursement is $2,000 per employee, we didn't budget $104,000 for health reimbursement because it was based upon past experience that said, okay, well, of that potential liability of $104,000, our experience has been we've only spent 30% of it. And okay, we add 5% for rough measures, so we budget 37% of that potential liability. That's the savings that I think would be realized.
Well, I was just looking at the WAC. That's just a wild guess.
Yeah, the $2,000 is the max per person that could be paid out in that year. We generally have 8, I think 8 has been our target number per year of people that actually use it. The cost is pretty minimal to have, but if you get to paying out 40 people, then the cost is pretty high. But the 2,000 is the max that would have been paid out.
In my experience, you plan for the worst, expect the best, and however the Lord shapes the tree, what falls out.
We usually double, we usually do 50% over what the previous year was. That way, we're well above where we should be. However, a lot of our staff is older and health issues come up, so we have to plan for that, so absolutely.
Jim.
No.
On 9.13 about administration and fiduciary oversight of the budget, says the city council shall provide by ordinance the procedures for administration and fiduciary oversight of the budget. The council is entrusted with fiduciary responsibility for the city and as such must provide review and oversight of the budget. The city manager administers the budget and manages the work programs and spending by departments within the policy, goals, and appropriations set by the council. As chief administrator, the manager must have the authority to revise the allotments at any time during the year and for any reason. Would that tell us that we cannot have a committee for that?
I think that's, the way I interpret it is that you can have a committee, it's just they can't make the decision over the budget.
Because it's saying review and oversight. That would be us, the council.
Well, there's a couple of problems with that. One of the issues that we brought up from the last audit was the city manager cannot simply say, I'm gonna check, okay, we budgeted $100,000 for legal fees. I'm gonna reduce what we're spending over here to increase legal fees. As the city charter says he has the authority from the accounting standards, and as a result of the last audit, that requires a budget amendment. And that budget amendment must be approved by council. This committee preparing a budget has absolutely no authority, okay? It's simply making recommendations to council as to what the budget should look like. Very much in the same manner as a planning and zoning committee looks at issues and then comes to council with recommendations. They don't take the action. Very much in the way this committee is coming to council with recommendations, they would be doing that. In the same manner as we depend upon experts for legal advice, but the actual action taken is by the vote of the council. We would be using such a budget committee that would be financial people that understand budgets, understand numbers, can do the planning, the CPAs and the accountants of the world that have the experience in municipal government can help put this together. To say, yeah, this is a good long-range financial plan for the city. So that we as business owners and we as real estate agents and we as retirees who don't specialize in reading budgets can get presentations, understand what it means, what these guys are proposing, ask the appropriate questions, and move on, versus getting wrapped around in the weeds of the process. That's all I was proposing, whether that becomes a recommendation of this committee or not. Based upon the city staff's recommendations for general cash fund deficit, we cannot make any immediate recommendations for next year's budget. We can talk about the process that is used without knowing what the cost is or the potential savings is on the health reimbursement arrangement. I think it would be inappropriate to make any recommendation until we know that. I believe that the budgeting cycle and health enrollment cost savings employer is constantly done by city staff and company. I think that the limit spending on essential city services is directed by city council and is already a council directive and requires no action by this group. Permit fees is a process that's already been initiated by city staff, and although the analysis of fees was a recommendation of the auditor, city staff has already initiated that. The effluent water was already a decision by council and is already seeing some extra revenue. Disposal fee for wastewater treatment plant sludge will be a decision of council without knowing what the totals are on that and the ramifications either way. I think we can, as a group, recommend or not recommend the leaving these positions vacant or eliminating these positions for the savings.